Welcome back to A Sharper Life, the podcast where transformation gets personal. I'm Nikki Sharp, and each week we cut through the noise to bring you raw, real, and radically empowering conversations on confidence, self-love, and becoming the boldest version of you. Ready to sharpen your mind, body, and soul? Let's dive in. So today I have with me Erin Claire Jones, who is one of the world's leading experts in human design, having helped thousands of people to live and work in alignment with their unique energetic blueprint. She's the founder of Human Design Blueprint, with over 1 million people downloading their charts, and now with her debut book, How Do You Choose? It offers a practical guide to making empowered decisions. Erin's work has been featured in Forbes, Vogue, and the Sunday Times, amongst many other places. Erin, it is a pleasure to have you here on A Sharper Life. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Let's dive in. So for those who have not heard about human design, what is it and why would someone benefit from learning about their human design type?
Of course. So human design is a system based on your time, date, and place of birth that gives you all this very personalized, practical information around how you move best through the world, whether it comes to how you make your best decisions, how you relate in relationships, how to build a business or career that actually feels aligned, how to communicate and kind of draw the truth out of other people. So I feel like it gives us so much permission to be ourselves. So that speaks to the benefits. I think often we see how others are doing business or parenting or relationships and assume that like if it worked for them, it might work for us. And I think what human design reminds us of is that we are all wired so differently. And the more we understand our unique wiring and really allow ourselves to flow with it, I just feel like, there's so much magic that lies on the other side of that.
Couldn't agree more on that. And definitely when I learned about that and we'll go into all the types, but that I'm a manifestor, I was like, this makes sense. I feel like someone gets me. So what I'd like to know then is, what are the key characteristics of each human design, and then what % of the population can be found in each type?
Okay, great. So, in human design, it's pretty infinite, all the layers that you can dive into, but at the first highest level, it's called the human design type. And there are 5 different types: manifesting generators, manifestors, reflectors, and projectors. If you all want to look up your human design, you can at humandesignblueprint.com. So why don't we start with manifestors, because you are one. Manifestors are about 8 to 9% of the population. So, it's actually one of the rarer types. Being a manifestor is all around the fact that you are somebody. I actually loved reading your website before, very much of like, I'm a trigger. And I was just like, oh my God, what a manifestor. But manifestors are really here to provoke. They are really here to initiate new ways of doing things, new perspectives into the world. They are not really here to tread a path that's been walked before, but carve an entirely new one. And they're often so good at kickstarting new ideas, bringing new things to life. Their gift is not always sustaining or completing what they've begun, but kind of getting things off the ground. They need freedom to kind of do what they want, when they want, how they want. And they often do well working for themselves or kind of working in a place where they have, a lot of freedom to set their own terms. And the last piece that I would share is that their energy is very bursty. You might find that you are so on fire, whether it's for a couple hours, weeks, or days, followed by kind of a time to be alone and let yourself recharge and let new ideas bubble up. So really not forcing consistent momentum, but allowing these natural ebbs and flows and cycles. And you're also the only type that's meant to make the first move. Many types are meant to let things come to them and kind of see what shows up in their world. For you, it's really staying connected to kind of what arises within you and just following that urge, whether or not you've seen anyone do it before. Curious how and if this is all landing with you.
100%. I mean, I think anyone who listens to this podcast or follows me online or has worked with me, they could all agree in that sentiment and statement of I actually like to say I'm audacious in asking for what I want, because I think, what's the worst someone's going to say? No. And so I end up just doing the things that most people are afraid to do, because I don't really have as much fear in it because I don't know, I feel like I'm guided. So it definitely resonates. Okay, so that's manifestors. What's the next one?
So then we've got manifesting generators, and these types make up about 70% of the population, so about 30 to 35% each. And generators are natural doers, people that have a lot of energy and stamina to make things happen when they feel genuine excitement by what they're doing. When they're lit up, they light up the room around them. So really prioritizing their own satisfaction and fulfillment is so important for them and is the most generous thing they could do for everybody. And generators also have like a real capacity for mastery. You know, the example I share in the book of a generator is LeBron James. Like, what an amazing example of somebody who's been very passionate, but also been like very dedicated and very committed and has become one of the best in his field. You know, generators often have to expend their energy fully throughout the day to feel satisfied. So you often know when a generator is aligned when they kind of drop into bed at night and they feel like delightfully spent. They're like, I left it all on the field. And they're really kind of here to like let things come to them and just see what sparks their gut. They're very naturally magnetic. Then we've got manifesting generators that share many of those qualities. Also boundless energy when they're excited, very kind of naturally enthusiastic, light up a room. But these people are often very multi-passionate. These are my clients that are like, you know, I own a dance studio. I'm also a practicing lawyer. I'm starting a podcast on the side. Like they need like freshness. They need pivot and change. And so often they've been made to feel scattered or like they're doing too much when they actually need that level of variety to stay satisfied. And they're incredibly fast. You actually have this in your design too, but they can often make things happen faster than most people. And so it's important for them to not expect others to match their speed.
Amazing.
Clear.
Okay.
And they too are meant to let things come to them and kind of see what sparks their gut. Then we've got projectors. I'm a projector. Projectors are 20%. Projectors are very natural leaders, guides, teachers, really good at asking the right questions, really good at making others feel seen and understood. They tend to be in positions where they're kind of stewarding other people's energy because they're just very attuned to others. They tend to like systems like human design or astrology or Enneagram because they just are curious about people and how they work, and they often love systems that will only deepen that understanding. Their energy really ebbs and flows. So a big lesson for us as projectors is really disentangling our worth from how hard we work and how much we do, you know, and trusting that it's really in our perspective and how we see. And as projectors, we're really here to be invited. So like make ourselves visible, put ourselves out into the world and see who makes us feel like deeply recognized and seen, because that often is the window, the signal that that's the right direction for us. The final type is a reflector. This is the rarest type. They make up just 1% of the population. And these people are, we call them evaluators in the context of business because they just see, sense, and feel things that basically everybody misses. They can see what's kind of not going right in a space and how things need to be improved. And so they do well in positions where they can share that perspective. They're so sensitive to their physical space. So being in the right space around the right people makes the biggest difference, really gets them on the right path. And they also are very fluid. These are, and you also might identify with parts of this too, because again, our human design is far beyond our type, but these people are meant to express themselves and their purpose in many different ways over the course of their life. So their job is not to figure out their one thing, but rather like stay connected to what feels the most like them in that moment and allow themselves to keep changing and evolving, because that's just part of who they are.
I mean, I feel like you just described me through all of those. So the follow-up question on that, can you be more than one type of, like, for human design, or is it you're kind of in, I don't want to say your box, but like you have your specific type? You have your specific type, you'll have just one, but I think it's just a really good reminder of, you know, the fact that there are so many other parts of our chart that can speak to it. You know, like you are a manifestor, you're here to be first and make the first move, but like you do, like manifesting generators, you have a separate gift in your design, which is around the fact that you could make more happen in a couple hours than most can in a whole day. You also have that fluidity that I talked about with reflectors of expressing your purpose in many different ways. You also might identify with how sensitive projectors are because you are so sensitive, you know, so there is like, these pieces like kind of tell us the whole picture and give us a lot more nuance, but we all have kind of one type and then it drills down from there. It reminds me very much actually of Ayurveda. So in Ayurveda there's 3 types, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and very similar of like Vata is, I'm Vata to the T of like the thinkers, that's like the Steve Jobs of the world, and then you have your Pittas, which is like Wolf of Wall Street, the wave a flag in front of a bull and they go and get it, and then Kapha really like brings people together and people feel really good. So I can kind of see similarities. And so my question then is, how is human design different or similar to like your zodiac sign, which people love to talk about astrology?
Of course. So, honestly, the simplest answer is like they're just different systems. Like it's not like the information overlaps in a way where like, oh, I have like this sun and therefore I'm a projector. But they're so supportive. And human design draws from many different systems. So it pulls from astrology, from the Kabbalah, from the chakra system, from the I Ching. So all these things kind of like take shape into something totally new in human design, but it has astrological roots for sure. And you can even see that when you look at the chart. But I do find the information is really different. I do so many readings for astrologers, and it's not like they look at the human design chart and they're like, I got it. Similar to me, I look at a natal chart and I'm like, what in the world is that? And so, but I will say what drew me to human design so much is that it really is so practical. Like I feel like astrology can speak to our personality and also kind of the cycles that we're in. And human design just like helps you understand your mechanics. Like how do you make decisions? How do you create opportunities? Like where are you most sensitive to other people's energy? Like what are the gifts that you can use in your marketing and your language? So there's something so like rooted that I love about it, even though it is obviously mystical because it comes from our birth information.
Totally agree on that one.
Yeah.
And I do remember, reading up about my chart and learning about that years ago. And then I was in a relationship at the time, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this makes complete sense. I was like, why I need my space and why my ex-husband, like wanted to be around me all the time. And like, and in your book too, you give examples of that, of like setting boundaries. And what I'd like to know though is, how does someone know that, or like common traits that they're living out of alignment with their design versus when someone learns about it and then they're living in alignment?
It's a great question. I think that I do feel like I experience two things when I share people's human design with them. There's either this very kind of like affirming, where like, oh my God, thank you for giving language to things I have already figured out and already know. And then there's also a very confronting aspect, and obviously there are so many different responses, but when I first discovered my human design, felt incredibly confronted because I was living opposite every single aspect that initial reader shared. I was like, what? I'm allowed to rest? And like, I'm not a doer. So just wherever y'all are on the spectrum, like it's perfect. Human design offers so many tools to, find your way back into alignment if that's what you desire. But there are very simple signals that can reveal whether we're on or off track in our lives, and I think these might be useful to bring up here. So I'll start with manifestors again. So when manifestors are out of alignment in their lives, which inevitably happens for all of us at certain points, whether it's in, sustained ways or quick ways, but a signal that you're out of alignment is a feeling of anger. And anger is more rooted in a feeling like disempowerment. It's like, I don't feel like I'm in control in the way that I want to be. I don't feel free to do what I want when I want. I feel like people are like trying to control me in a way that just feels like, icky. And so for you, when anger shows up really persistently, it's an invitation to really reflect on like, is this still the right place for me? And if it indeed is there a way that I could show up differently that would feel more sustainable for me? For you, when you're on track as a manifestor, it shows up as peace. And what I see in peace is like, it's like the freedom to do what you want, when you want, how you want, feeling empowered, like
that's like my motto.
Really? Okay. Tell me. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Do you see that? Like, how do you relate to that spectrum?
Absolutely. I mean, it's for me, when I feel out of alignment, just as you said, it's like, I've learned to let go of control and really like sit in uncertainty and trust the universe and surrender. But I find that, when there's anger, it's either towards myself or towards someone else because I was disappointed in whatever it might be. And that's when I start feeling out of alignment, and I can see it like physically manifest in my body where I get inflammation.
Yeah.
And so that's always or if I'm like pushing myself too hard. And something that I love what you said though is like, it gives us permission to recognize who we are and what we're doing. And something just as you said, I get these huge grandiose ideas, or like I'll be so dialed in. Like a few weeks ago, I was having dinner, and I ended up spending, it was like 5:30 at night. I took my laptop. I've been working on this new project, and just inspiration struck. And I sat there for the next 5 hours at this members club,
Wow.
drinking wine, writing on my laptop. And I've learned, like, when inspiration strikes like that, like, I gotta go with it. And then the next day I might be completely burned out, and to allow myself the rest. And that was like, that's when the magic came, when I was like, it's okay for me to sit on my bed for 2 hours on a Tuesday, because that's actually what then fuels me.
Totally. And like, especially as a manifester, it's those moments of rest that actually new ideas can come through. So if you're like in this mode of like, I've got to keep pushing and making things happen, like, you know, I talk about this in the book, but you make yourself in some ways unavailable for new ideas to come through. So I love that you followed that up with that, because that's just like how your energy works, you know. But it's easy to feel guilt of like, oh, I've got to show up and work 9 to 5 or do it during the day like others are doing, when like that just might not be your way of doing it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, what about the other key types then?
So for generators and manifesting generators, a signal they're off track or something needs to be looked at is when they feel frustration. And the way that I like to describe that is like, it's just some frustration with like the way that you're using your energy. You're like just like a little bit resentful of like, I don't really want to be doing this. I feel really like annoyed by this. I feel like I'm not using my energy in ways that feel deeply satisfying. And a sense of being on track is satisfaction. It's just like this contentment with the way that you're expending your energy each day. It's like your relationships bring you fulfillment. Like using your energy at work feels deeply satisfying. So, you know, I do think that as generators and manifesting generators, I would ask yourself how you feel when you get into bed. Like, do you feel like so satisfied and fulfilled by how you used your energy that day? Or is there this like lingering frustration and resentment and restlessness? And that kind of is a good signal of like, oh, I could maybe use my energy differently. For projectors, when we are out of alignment and something needs to shift is when we feel bitter. And bitter is often rooted in a feeling of, I don't feel appreciated, I don't feel recognized for my perspective, or like I have so much that I want to share, nobody's asking me. To be off track is to feel successful. Of course, that can look like financial success, but more than that, it's like, I just feel like recognized and appreciated and invited to be who I am, and like people really value my contributions. And then finally, for reflectors, to be off track is disappointment, which is often when they're spending time in the wrong spaces with the wrong people. They're trying to show up in just one consistent way rather than kind of allowing their vastness to express itself. And to be on track, which might be my favorite, is surprise. It's kind of like marveling at their many expressions, their many ways of doing things, kind of having opportunities come in really unforeseen ways. But that kind of feeling of surprise is an indicator to keep moving in that direction.
So interesting. And I can only imagine just when you do readings, or when people download their reports, whether it's free or the paid one, or even then reading the book as well, like that feeling of like being seen, like that's definitely what I got of, I feel seen in this. And I can imagine, like I actually was with a friend earlier today, and I was asking her, are there any questions you would like me to ask? And she was saying how she's a reflector. And
Wow.
and she was like, when I learned that, it's like everything made sense. And that was like very similar my experience as well. And I'm sure you've seen that with people doing their readings, when it's just like, whoa, like I feel seen. Just to like put it into context, because, you know, celebrities, we know them for the most part, or, you know, we know different celebrities, but what are examples of famous people or characters, celebrities that are in each type?
Yeah. And, you know, you might have seen this in the book, but I begin each chapter talking about a celebrity and kind of an instance in their life that reflects their design, because I think it's just a helpful way to like understand these things in context. So let's think. So generators, some examples, the ones I use in my book are Oprah and LeBron James. You know, generators, again, people that just like light up a room with their energy. Manifesting generators, the example I use in my book is The Rock, because he was just like wrestling, acting, like starting this brand. And, you know, Jessica Alba is also a really great example of a manifesting generator, like people that really, again, are so charismatic, but also so multi-passionate. Harry Styles, I believe, is a manifesting generator. Projectors, the examples I use are Nelson Mandela and RuPaul, but, you know, Obama's a projector. Honestly, there are a lot of presidents who have been projectors. Taylor Swift is another great example of a projector. Manifestors, the examples I use in the book are Gloria Steinem and Maya Angelou. They're both honestly like extraordinary examples of manifestors, but Adele is a manifestor as well. I think that she's a really good example just because like you can like feel how powerful she is and also like how impactful her voice is. And like manifestors just have like a very powerful, impactful voice. Reflectors, there are obviously fewer because it's rare. The ones I use in my book are Sandra Bullock and Rosalind Carter, and also Amma, who's like the hugging saint. But they also are good examples of people that need to take their time, but also like really kind of mirror back and are so wise about their environment.
And in the book, which I love, by the way, I really highly recommend it for anyone listening. Very fascinating, greatly laid out, and just like the journal prompts and everything. You talk about the different decision making for each of the types. Could you go into that? Because I found that super, super fascinating.
Of course. So in human design, there are 7 different authorities, and they basically speak to how we make decisions. And, you know, I call the book How Do You Choose? Because I find that that's one of the most useful things human design can offer is how do we actually make decisions day to day in a way that actually feels good to us. So not every type will have the same authority. There are certain options for each authority, each type. So the 7 authorities are sacral, emotional, splenic, self-projected, ego, mental, and none. If somebody, I'll talk about yours first. You are a splenic authority. This is one of 3 possible authorities for manifestors. So you are somebody who is meant to make decisions fast, in the moment, based on like this whisper of your intuition. You know, it is just like comes out of nowhere, disappears just as quickly. So for you, it's really having kind of getting quiet enough to actually hear yourself and then getting courageous enough to act on it, you know. And I think these people can feel like a little bit impulsive or like they're rushing into things when like they're actually meant to move incredibly fast. I think the thing I always remind these people of who have this authority is that it is the quietest authority of them all. And so any practices that help you quiet down and hear yourself, whether it's meditation or being in nature or just being on your bed for 2 hours, like those things are so important because you are somebody who's so sensitive that it's really easy to get influenced by other people's feelings just when you're around them. How's that one resonate or not with you?
100%. I mean, that's when I make decisions, I've learned to hone in with one simple phrase of, is it a fuck yes or a fuck no?
Yeah.
And that allows me just to make it into it. Like it takes away all the noise. And then I get these, like downloads of like, it's time to move to a new place. Like leave London, go to LA. And I'm like, wait, what? But then, and I've learned to stop questioning when the download comes and just, as you said, take action on it. And then when I do everything, I'm like, oh yeah, of course. And so people, you know, have been watching my life and what I do, and they're like, wait, okay, you're like in Ibiza right now, or like, wait, weren't you just in Tulum, or are you here? You're there. And I'm like, yes, exactly.
Totally.
So spot on with everything. So, and the authority is quick sub question before you go on to the other ones. So we just talked about the splenic. Does your authority and like your decision making, does it translate exactly to your human design type, or can they kind of be mixed and matched? Like, how do you know which one is your authority based on your human design?
Yeah, so they can be mixed and matched. So basically, when you look up your chart at humandesignblueprint.com, you'll see your kind of a list of attributes, and you'll see your type, and then you'll see your authority listed. So that's how you find it out. But you know, for context, generators and manifesting generators have 2 possible authorities. Manifestors have 3, projectors have 5, and reflectors have just 1. You know, and so like it is, you and your partner might both be manifestors or manifesting generators, but actually make decisions very differently. And one of the, you know, things, and I don't know if you read any of these stories in the book, but it's really useful to not only understand your own authority, but the authority of the people around you. You know, I tell one story in the book about a couple that was deciding whether or not to move to New York. And one of them was super fast like you. She immediately knew. And she was so annoyed by her partner because she's like, he's so slow, he's waffling, he's indecisive. But like when we looked at his chart, he was meant to give himself a full month. And so what she perceived as waffling was just his process of finding his truth. And so it can be so useful to understand, again, not only ours, but those of the people close to us.
Absolutely. And there was another story too that I really liked in the book of the woman. This is me as well, like with these downloads of like meeting someone and like knowing
I know.
that you're meant to be together, and the other person is, as you said, like waffling or wish-wash.
Right.
And I'm sitting here being like, okay, come on.
So obvious.
I know. And that was, yes, a story that you had shared in the book, and the couple ended up getting together. So really resonate with a lot of it. So,
Yeah.
okay, we've talked about splenic.
Yeah.
Tell me more then about the sacral and emotional. And
Okay.
we'll go from there.
So sacral authorities, this one's possible for generators or manifesting generators. This is all about making decisions in the gut. It's like kind of this visceral feeling in their belly that will either pull them towards or push them away from something. It's quick like it's quick like a splenic, but it's very just like in the body, and like you can literally see the body respond. The gut, like your intuition, comes without a reason. It's just like this thing feels right or it doesn't. I think something that's very cool about the sacral is that it responds very well to specific questions. So if you want to kind of pull out somebody's gut feeling, it's really useful to give them specific options. To be like, hey, do you want to do this or this? Like option A or option B, go out for dinner, cook at home. Like when you pose things in that way, they're often like, yes, no. So that's a really beautiful way to kind of help them drop into their gut and kind of get them out of the endless possibility of the mind. There are emotional authorities, which is possible for every single type with the exception of reflectors. This is my authority. I find it annoying and yet very useful. Our process is about giving ourselves a beat, sleeping on things, giving ourselves a day or 2 or 3. This is obviously most important for the big decisions, not day-to-day decisions, even though I find day-to-day decisions a little bit of space still helps. So I've really learned to say, hey, this sounds amazing. Can I let you know tomorrow or the day after? And I find that often I will say yes in the moment and wake up the next day and be like, I don't want to do it. And so as annoying as I found it, I know that giving myself a beat helps me choose the right things in the end. Then we've got self-projected authorities. This one is only possible for projectors. They find clarity by talking things out. Just speaking things out with people they trust, and honestly just seeing how it feels to say things aloud and seeing kind of how it feels when they say it out of their mouth and they're like, oh, that feels right or that doesn't. Then we have ego authorities, which honestly I'm curious if you resonate with this one too, because you've got a little bit of this in your design, even though you are indeed a splenic authority. Ego authorities are meant to choose based on like what they have, what their heart is in, like what they desire, what they want, what they feel like they must have, and also where they feel like their power will really be valued and respected. I often know that these people kind of have reached their truth when they're like, I have to do this, I must do it, I want it. It's like just like this undeniable conviction in their voice. I'm curious if you resonate with that one too.
I definitely, as I was reading through them at first, I was like, oh, I'm definitely sacral, like that gut feeling. But then as I read the splenic, I'm like, okay, that's definitely me. But what was it, the self-projected, the one where you like talk it out?
Yeah.
I also really resonate with that one personally, because it's like, I call it, I'm like therapizing therapy,
Yeah.
but like therapizing myself, and like I'll talk to friends. And it's not even, like, I don't really care
what they say.
But it's like, I'm not looking for their confirmation. It's
Yeah.
more when I'm speaking it out loud, I'm getting clarity on the very questions that I have. So and then also,
Totally.
the ego, like, I absolutely resonate with a lot of them. Obviously, I'm splenic as, like, the first one, but I can see, as I've given myself more permission in my life and slowed down and tuned in, that I can see how they kind of all ebb and flow within my own life.
Totally. And yeah, you do have that piece of like, we do have a primary authority, but other pieces can fill in. Like, I do think that you do talking things out is really important, and it kind of will help you access your truth.
Podcast after all.
Yeah, of course. And for you, it is so much around this like conviction that just comes through your voice where you're like, oh, I have to move. I have to do this thing. Okay, the two other ego authorities are possible for manifestors and projectors. Then we've got mental authorities, also just a projector authority. These people also just have to talk things out, but also in a few different spaces that feel really good, and kind of seeing what threads of truth come out as they speak to different people. The final authority is true for all reflectors. It's called none, or wait a lunar cycle. And they are meant to give themselves a full month, a full 28 to 30 days before they choose, which I know can sound a little bit wild to many of us. And yet when I sit with reflectors, they're like, obviously, and the key here is not that they, have to wait 30 days for every single decision, because that won't always be realistic. But I think what is important is that they make decisions from a very unpressured, unhurried place, that they have space to kind of disentangle their feelings from other people's feelings and eventually land in what actually feels true for them.
Yeah, that one I do not resonate with it. I'm like
You're the
sitting
opposite.
there reading
Yeah.
30 days. I'm like, no, that gives
Yeah.
me too much time to think. Yeah, it's like that's so interesting. And so those are the seven authorities
Mm-hmm.
which help us understand our decision making, and then we have the five types for human design, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And I mean, some critics say, and this can go for any and all of these different things that we talk about, like Enneagram or even like Ayurveda, Chinese
Yeah.
medicine. But some critics do say that human design is spiritual pseudoscience. What do you have to say or respond to that?
I think that, I probably take a less dogmatic approach to human design than many human design teachers do, and I lay that out in the book. But I think that what matters to me is not whether human design is true, it's whether it's useful. So,
That's brilliant.
I think that, I'm not trying to prove anyone of its veracity. I'm not saying, this is science, believe it. I have sat with many thousands of people over the years, and I've seen it just resonate in ways that are so undeniable and so helpful. And honestly, with the people that are the most skeptical, they're like, I don't want to believe this. This sounds totally crazy. And yet, everything you're saying describes me in a way that feels incredibly useful. And I want to know about everybody in my life as a result. So I think that, if you're curious and you're skeptical, which I totally support, just listen, see if it feels helpful. And I actually had such an interesting conversation in LA recently. I was there for a podcast and I sat with somebody who did not know her birth time. And, I was like, well, let's just talk. I had a real sense of who she might be. And as we talked, it was like she just became so clear. She's like, I'm a manifestor. I'm like this authority. And then we ended up sitting with her daughters and her husband. And we actually never looked up a chart. And we just had a conversation around all the different archetypes and where they felt like they might fit. And there are some challenges to this because often we're not living in alignment. But it was really interesting for me to be like, we never even looked up a chart. And yet this conversation brought this family so much clarity. And I was just like, and that's useful too. So I just think we often live our lives in autopilot and don't really take the time to step back and ask ourselves, who are we and how do we choose? And I think human design offers us a framework to do that, whether or not we believe that birth information can offer us all this information.
Great answer. And I really couldn't agree more. I think we're all on a path of wanting to, as you said, who am I? What am I here for? What's my purpose? And then we compare ourselves or judge ourselves based on how other people are doing things. And what I find useful about human design, just as you said, is you can learn about yourself, learn about other people, and then create and navigate, whether it's boundaries or just different decision making within that. So I fully agree with that. What's the most misunderstood elements, do you think, in human design within relationships, whether it's with ourselves and just based on your experience working with so many people?
Yeah, I think, I guess I would say that I feel like a big misunderstanding about human design, and let me know if this doesn't answer your question, but I feel like when people use it to tell them what they can or cannot do, if they're like, okay, I'm a projector and therefore I can't take this job, or I'm a generator and I can only date this other type. I've had people be like, please, creating a dating app, I want to see who's compatible. And I guess I just don't believe in using the system that way, which is not to say it can't be, but for relationships, for example, my encouragement is to see who you feel naturally drawn to, see who your intuition draws you to, and then once you've chosen the person, look at your designs and see how you can best support each other, and same with a job. It's if you love your job, use your design to find a way to make it work for you, to do it in a way that actually feels sustainable. How a manifestor entrepreneur will run a business is very different than a projector entrepreneur. So I guess using the system to limit who we can be with and what we can do, to me feels just a really not useful application of the system. And I feel like it is a misunderstanding because I have many people come to me in sessions and they're like, I was told I couldn't do this. What do you think about that? And so that's a big piece. Yeah, that's what really comes up.
I mean, couldn't agree more too on that. It's with any and all of these different modalities and practices, and even when we look at food diets, is just because something works for you one time or worked for someone else doesn't mean that it will work for you in this moment. And just the seasons, things change and our patterns change. And so I appreciate how you're saying that, of it again kind of gives us permission, but it's not something that we need to hold steadfast to, of you can't do this or be this person. And just as I've been sort of explaining, I feel like I resonate with many of them, but obviously I am, the manifester. In terms of then, like the different human design types, and does it help us explain relationship patterns, like why we attract certain people? And I'll give an example on this. So I am a manifestor, and this is a way not out of line question, but it could be totally incorrect, or there could be some truth to it. So what I've noticed in my life was because I'm a very, very giving person, and I like giving my energy, and I feel like my energy is what speaks kind of the loudest, and I love giving my ideas to people, so I'm always helping with their businesses or whatever comes to me. I'm like, here, have this. But in that, I've noticed a pattern, which I now have very much broken, but that I was attracting more almost like narcissistic style people, or people that would take from me. So I'm wondering, do the human design types can it explain and attribute to why someone like me as a manifestor has that, and are there other patterns that you've seen?
Yeah, I think it can. I think there are a lot of pieces that can explain those patterns for sure. And it even extends beyond you being a manifestor. When I hear that, what comes up looking at your design is you have something called the defined ego. I know that's going to mean nothing to basically all of you, but for those few listeners who know what human design is, I'll share it just so you know. It basically means that you have a lot of loyalty, you have a lot of heart. Like when you feel inspired, like you can be so endless in all that you can give. But I think a big lesson for you is around reciprocity, is around feeling really valued in return, that you're not overgiving, that it's like, I'm giving so much, but I'm receiving so much, And so that's kind of a thing that you're meant to pay attention to in your relationships of like, we might not give in the same way. You might not have the same capacity as me, but I need to feel like my energy is so valued, so appreciated. Like, do you feel like that awareness, which you probably already have, would help you identify those situations faster?
100%. And this is why I love human design, for example, is like spot on. And that's something that I learned about. I'm not like a tit for tat person. I don't give because I need you to give back to me. I don't even really need a thank you.
Yeah.
I give because I want to. But what I found, and another little, like, I love giving little anecdotes and stories to just enhance the conversation. Yeah. So with that, I love throwing parties. And over the course of the years in my house, I do these phenomenal, like intimate dinner or whatever themed parties. I choose a theme. I create a playlist. I decorate the house like that. I create all the food, and I love doing it. And then what I started realizing and getting a little frustrated, interestingly enough, about was that these people that I would invite, and different, groups and all of that, and in Miami and London, weren't inviting me out. And I'm like, I've invited this person out to like multiple events and parties, and like, at what point do I stop giving my time or energy or money because and again, like, it's not that reciprocity, but that exactly what you said, Erin, of like, it started making me think a little bit more of, do I want to keep giving when I feel like people are enjoying it? And it's not that they're being takers, but so you just confirmed the inner work that I've been doing on my own.
Yeah. And again, it's not like, I think it's important to just, confirm what you said, where it's not about like, I need people to give in the same way, but it's like giving in a way where it's like, this feels like there's reciprocity. Like I feel inspired to keep throwing parties because of the way that people are showing up for me too, And so I think that, like, again, it's because you have so much to give and you can be so loyal and bring so much heart, that making sure that you feel like valued in return is just an important thing to be aware of. And so, yes, every type and every design will kind of have that. I think for projectors, a big lesson is like, we're here to be invited in, but often there can be this like real desire to be seen. So we might kind of initiate connection and like try to convince others of our worth. And that just never leads to the connection that we want, And so that was a big lesson for me in dating and relationships, of really just like seeing where the recognition came really naturally, where I didn't have to like force a thing, and like who came to me. And I feel like that really has been so helpful and like helped me release a lot of, frustration.
And any of the other types, are there certain patterns or relationships that they tend to attract?
Well, I would say for generators and manifesting generators, like they're so capable. And so they can end up kind of attracting relationships and being in ones where they just carry everything. and without maybe much appreciation. And so like, I think it's so important for them to kind of really communicate with and be with people that like really appreciate how valuable their energy is, don't expect them to carry everything, and like also really wants them to have space to kind of do the things they love. It's often like such a love language for generators and manifesting generators for others to be like, I'm going to take this thing off your plate so you can like go spend an hour working on your novel or like being in the garden or like spending time with your child, whatever the thing is. So I think they can just end up caring so much and kind of like become a bit of a martyr and placing their own passions on the side instead of being with people that really see those passions as something that should be front and center.
Very interesting.
And then I think reflectors magnify the energy that they're around. So sometimes they'll be around somebody who's maybe not in a good place and they kind of see it as something wrong with the reflector because like they're just magnifying it back to them. So I think, it's so important for reflectors to be with people that are just mindful of how impactful their energy is and are also conscious of the fact that like all this stuff I'm seeing in them is like might be my own stuff, So I think they need to be with people that are quite self-aware and also willing to kind of take responsibility for their energy and what they're emanating.
Fascinating. A question that just came up actually as you were saying that for the manifesting generators and generators, it sounds like very much quality time is maybe a love language that tickles them a bit more. Have you noticed any patterns of the different, so the 5 love languages of the different languages being reflected, or like, what's the specific question that I'm trying to, I mean, you understand.
Yeah, it's a great question. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I think that I did like a little survey on Instagram recently, or like honestly a year ago. So I wish I remembered all of it. But what I see with generators and manifesting generators, for sure, quality time, especially when they get to do a thing that they really enjoy. Like, it's like, oh, like my partner loves to do this. I'm going to go spend time with them doing that. But also acts of service. When again, they're like, you're taking this thing off my plate, giving me more space. Projectors and reflectors tend to love words of affirmation. For us to feel like recognized and seen for like what we bring to the table, like it unlocks everything in us. I'm actually curious what yours are as manifestors, as a manifester.
My top love language has always been words of affirmation, and that's because growing up, and still to this day, I don't really get that from my parents, and also because I feel very, and maybe this is as a manifestor, I feel very misunderstood, and I'm like, all these people see that I have this, big profile and all the, whatever, but I'm like, you don't really know me, like, you think you do, and so when I have someone who shares, even like a comment and someone leaving a review, I'm like, wow, like I feel a little more seen, and thank you, that really means a lot. And so that's the words of affirmation. It's definitely a huge one for me. Over the last year, acts of service became a little bit bigger because it just was like non-existent in my life.
Yes.
For me, quality time is that is the key thing, where I'm like, I'd rather see someone once a week or speak to a friend, but like really have that presence with them versus like spending time every single day. Like I don't need that. I'm good. But
yeah. You probably saw like in the chapter on manifestors and relationships, it's just like your constant availability and presence is like not the measure of like, it's not what you're meant to be measured on in relationships, because you're so impactful when you do show up and allowing you that space. But I love that you said that, because I think manifestors have often shared with me how useful it is to be reminded of how impactful they are, like the impact they're having. So it's not like the kind of all this maybe specific acknowledgement that projectors need, but it's more like, yeah, like they're like, this is so amazing what you're doing. I'm being so impacted by you and how you're showing up. And it really inspires manifestors to keep showing up. So
100%.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
It's absolutely spot on. And that, like when I get messages from clients on just how much they value the work or the changes they've seen, I'm like, it definitely tickles me. And I feel very, very good with that. In your experience, what are some of the biggest aha moments that people get when you read their charts?
Yeah, I love that question. I think that, what comes up for me is that I feel like so often people have made themselves wrong for the things that are so fundamental to who they are. And so the aha moments tend to revolve around just like a real reframe. Like, to give examples for each type, manifesting generators often have been made, I think I said this already, have been made to feel scattered, like they're doing too much if they're like super multi-passionate or can't choose just one thing. And then they're like, oh my God, I don't have to. Like, I'm meant to do all these things, and it's okay to like do many things at once. And so that tends to give them a lot of permission. I think a big aha for generators is around the fact that they feel like the way they can show up for others is by kind of taking care of everyone else's needs. But like that is the fastest path to burnout. And when they create space to do the things that feel deeply satisfying to them and might feel selfish, it's what gives them so much energy to show up for everything else. So that's often hopefully a very relieving reframe for generators of like, me prioritizing my own fulfillment is the most generous thing I can do. I think for manifestors, what I often see is that they felt like incompetent, or they have felt maybe like something's wrong with them because they can't finish everything that they start. And there's often a real aha of like, sometimes like my gift is just getting it started. Like that's enough. Like others can help sustain the thing. So that can tend to be quite a relief. I'm curious how you feel about that one before I keep moving. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely like, I have all the creative ideas and I might start like 50 different things. And then in the past I would beat myself up because I'm like, well, I didn't finish this project, or I'm working on it too long and it's not coming, or I started something. And so I've really just kind of learned that I have a million ideas that come to me, and most of them are incredibly good. I need the right people, and just as you've mentioned in the book too, of like, I need the right people behind me to help bring the ideas to life, because by the time I've then like started the process of the idea or the creation, I'm on to something next and I haven't necessarily finished that one.
Yeah, and like your role is not to finish it, but again, so many manifestors beat themselves up for that. I would say for projectors, like a big aha comes around rest. I feel like rest is just so essential for all of us, but really for projectors, kind of building it into our days. And I think for me as a projector, I used to feel like even rest had to be productive. It was like, what podcast will I listen to? What course will I take? And I think it was just really hard and a really important lesson to be like, it's okay to be unproductive. Like, it's okay to actually do nothing. And that's kind of your moment. And like, that's going to be true in different seasons. Like, I have 2 young kids, so my time for rest is short, and yet I'll take it now, and not try to accomplish another thing during it. I would say the biggest aha for reflectors, which I think is honestly such a big one, and again, could be true for you too, is they often have spent a lot of their lives searching for like their one purpose, like what are they here to do? And it can be really relieving to realize like that's not the question to ask. The question to ask themselves is, what feels the most like me right now? And how can I let that continue to evolve and change? And so releasing the pursuit of one single purpose and allowing themselves to express themselves in many ways often is a big reframe, and also a very liberating one.
I can imagine, and I mean, you're just dropping like wisdom after wisdom. I love it. It's interesting, a conversation that I was having earlier with my friend. She's a PR agent here in London, the Reflector. We were talking about sort of like how to brand me within the media, and a niche. The niche came up, and I'm like, the thing is, people have tried to like put me in a niche for my whole career, being like, well, I wrote this best-selling detox program and plan, and I'm like, yeah, but like I don't want to be known as the detox girl. And then I created loads of recipes, and I'm like, but I don't want to be in just like food, nutrition, all of that. Mm-hmm. And I keep going and shifting and changing, and I'm like, so it's both like within that context and my own life, it's that double-edged sword of I get to explore different passions and like do the podcast and write books and coach clients, and I'm learning about this and that. And then at the same time, it's also harder in a sense, because when people come to my Instagram page, for example, they're like, I don't know exactly what it is that you teach. I'm like, welcome to my world.
Totally.
I'll bring you in.
Yeah. And again, that's a great example of like, it's not about niching down for you, and it's not about putting yourself in a box and like being like, how can I make sense to others? Because you are ever evolving. And so like, as much as you might be like, I've got to create a thing, which it sounds like you're not, it's going to be uncomfortable, because at some point you're gonna be like, that's uncomfortable, I've got to break out of it. Like, that's just not me. So it's just like, how can we just accept the multidimensionality from the beginning?
Yeah. So I'm curious, I pulled up my chart, or downloaded the thing, and obviously I've read the book, which again, you guys go out and buy. It's amazing. Anything you want to share just based on the conversations for those who are maybe manifestors or just going a little bit deeper since you have my personal chart.
Oh yeah, about your chart?
Yeah.
Well, I guess one thing I want to share is beyond you being a manifestor, it's about something called your profile. You are a 3-5. So again, if you guys look up your chart, you'll see these things listed. So I'm going to talk about the 5 piece only because I feel like it spoke to some themes that you were talking about. So if anybody looks at their chart and they see that their profile is listed as a 5-1, 5-2, 2-5, or 3-5.
Oh my God, what? My friend was asking this too. She was like, I'm a 5-2 reflector, but is that different than, like, how do you make sense to like a 5-1? And that's where I was like, okay, you
what are you
lost me.
talking about? I know.
So, Erin, give me a little background
About
on
what it is.
the different numbers. Yeah.
So there are basically 12 different profiles. And honestly, this is one of my favorite parts of the chart. It really speaks to our purpose, relationships, kind of the path that we're meant to walk in our career. It's just super juicy. And I think that, but even though they're, without making it too confusing, even though there are 12 different profiles, there are just 6 different numbers, 1 through 6. So that's why even though you're 3-5 and your friend might be a 5-2, the 5 piece is a piece that you guys share. You know, it's just a different placement, which I won't get so into without making people feel so confused. But for example, like this is what it actually means. Like the 5 in your profile is around the fact that you're here to impact many people. I feel like you're doing that. You're also here to be like a little bit heretical, like kind of like doing things your own way. Again, very manifestor-like as well. The piece that I heard you talking about is that the 5 piece means that it's very easy for people to project things onto you. That you can be this, or that you can fix them, or save them, or guide them, or whatever, project anything onto you. I see so many celebrities with a 5 in their profile. And so much of your life lesson is not getting swept away with other people's expectations or desires for you, whether it's in an intimate relationship, being pedestalized there, or whether it's, you know, an Instagram follower thinking you can be something, and staying really rooted in like what really feels like me. You know, and I think that people can put you on a pedestal and then realize like you're human, because we all are. So I think for you, just really making sure that you stay rooted in who you are, but also you're like a very natural problem solver and fixer. And so it requires some discernment for you around what are the problems and things you actually feel inspired to fix, and kind of not just applying that gift to everything. How's that? Well, and then the 3 part of your profile, and again, this is true for 1-3s, 3-5s, 3-6s, and 6-3s, means that you're somebody who learns through trial and error. Like you've got to get your hands dirty. Like somebody might be like, this thing works, and you're like, cool, I've got to like do it for myself and see if I actually believe it. It applies to every part of your relationship, building your business, throwing things against the wall, seeing what sticks, learning what doesn't work, continuing to grow, romantic relationships. You know, I think a big lesson for 3s is allowing messiness and trial and error into their lives, and just knowing that everything that doesn't work brings them closer to what does. You know, so how can they just like treat each experience as like an opportunity to kind of keep growing and learning?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, all of it. And this is why I am so fascinated with human design as well. And when I learned about it and went down the huge rabbit hole a few years ago, very, very, I mean, I know I just keep saying this, but spot on. I feel like that's
crazy,
probably
right?
a lot of clients where you're just like, yep, that's me. And that's something that I've realized too, is like when I am in like the decision making process, or I'll give you an example here. So in my last flat or apartment that I was in, there was mold that occurred, a leak and then mold. And when I shared it on Instagram after dealing with the landlord and trying to, you know, figure things out, people were like, and there was like a lot of drama that was going on behind the scenes, and people were like, well, why don't you just move? And oh my God, that's so bad for you. And I found that the more that people told me that, just as you said earlier, the more angry I was getting. I'm like,
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Totally.
Like, and I say that with love, but I'm like, you don't know the exact like circumstances. Like, stop literally everything
Totally.
you're saying. That's why I'm like laughing of like spot on, because I'm like, stop projecting how you would live your life. I live mine very differently. I'll figure it out. I did in the end. And it's like you're speaking very much, obviously, and reading my chart and what, you know, things that I've said, that's like, I live my life to my own accord. And for the longest time, I tried to fit in. And then by trying to fit in, I was just getting desperately unhappy. I'm like, I don't think I'm meant to fit in in any way, shape, or form. And if anything, I'm meant to fit out and then give permission to others to do the same.
It's so right. And like, I think to your question of like, what I would have manifestors know, like, it's exactly that. It's like, yeah, it can be hard, like you said, of like, I fear being misunderstood or that people won't get me. And yet, like, the more you kind of like hold yourself back, the less people will get you. Like, manifestors are really here to be so audacious, bold and courageous. And in doing so, like, you might repel a lot of people, but then you're also going to really impact all the right ones. And it also really gives others permission to be bold too. So manifestors, I think, can really be such an example for so many of us of like, wow, look at how they're doing things. Like, I can also express more authentically.
I love that. What's one, like, we've talked about a lot of different things, and I hope for whoever's listening or watching, I would highly recommend go and listen to this again because there was so many juicy things. What is one thing for each of the 5 types? Like one bullet point that we haven't gone over, that if this is the only piece that they really take away, like one thing you want each human design type to know about themselves
that we haven't talked about. Okay. Let's see.
Or we kind of like summing everything up into one bullet point sentence.
Okay, I like it. Okay, so I guess for manifesting generators, the thing that comes up is that your path is probably not going to make sense to other people. And that's okay. As long as it like feels right to you and you feel excited by what you're drawn to, that's enough. Don't try to make all the things make sense together, because they might not, at least right now. I think what comes up for generators is to just really treat their energy as so precious. Like, you really contribute so much to whatever you show up to. So really cultivating strong boundaries, which is a big lesson around what does your gut actually pull you towards? How can you say yes to those things? And also say no to the things that don't feel right, even if you fear disappointing others, which you might. I think with projectors, I said it again, I said it already, I'll say it again, is just really allowing in rest, like just moments of pause in your days to really check in on your energy levels and not forcing yourself to consistently produce. That's just not your gift. For manifestors, we didn't talk about this, but it's important. This might be really annoying, and yet you might find that life is a little bit easier when you just keep the people that matter in the loop. Let them know what you're going to do before you do it. I'm coming home late, I'm pivoting in this project. Just keep people in the loop, kind of lets people move with your energy and makes them feel respected and allows you to make things happen more easily. And I guess for reflectors, I would say, again, like I said, you see, sense, and feel things that most people miss. So I would just like trust what you see. Like, trust what you see is super valuable intel. Don't like be like, oh, whatever. It's like, no, you're feeling something. So I would really not, discard that. I would think about what are the right venues to share that.
That was amazing. Perfect. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you would like me to?
Oh my God, I just love your questions. I think you're such a great question asker. No, I don't. I feel like, whether or not you all choose to dive deeper down the human design rabbit hole, I think it just offers us a really powerful reminder of the fact that we're all wired differently. So no more questions. I just hope people remember that, that they're all different. And the more we honor that, I think the more we flow and the closer we feel to each other.
Amazing. Erin, you are wonderful. This has been an absolutely delightful interview. Where can people find you and get your book down? I mean, you've mentioned it, but give us all the juicy details.
Of course. So the book is called How Do You Choose? A Human Design Guide to What's Best for You at Work and Love and in Life. It's available anywhere books are sold. I am on Instagram at Erin Claire Jones and Human Design Blueprint, and my website is humandesignblueprint.com, and we have amazing courses there, but also sell a custom guide all about your unique design if you want to go further down the rabbit hole. And we have a discount code for that, both for the course. The discount code is A Sharper Life.
Amazing. And of course, I will put all of that down in the show notes. Erin, thank you so much for coming on A Sharper Life and for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with everyone. And until next week, here's to a sharper life.